Welcome, everyone, for this next session on the topic of social impact entrepreneurship. My name is Rafiuddin Shiko. I'm the managing director of Dinar Standard, as well as a new social venture building platform called Good Force Labs. We have this year a very exciting theme, as you know, for Islamic Economy Summit called the Shared Future. And for those of you who have looked at this year's State of the Global Islamic Economy report, you would see that we have introduced a whole new area called Global Ethical Economy and Islamic economy's relevance in that sphere. So this panel really will encapsulate that spirit, that mission. But before I introduce the panelists, we have with us Mr. Behnam Gurbanzada, who's the counselor to Deputy Chairman and Chief Islamic Finance Officer of Sberbank, from Russia, who will share with us an amazing social impact project out of Russia from the bank called Pay Zakat. So we'll start with you, sir.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear participants, dear guests, dear friends, and I suppose dear responsible entrepreneurs. Guys, today I'm here, I'm from Moscow. My name is Behnam. And you may ask the biggest bank of Russian Federation, what do we do here? So, social impact, bankers, they think about the money, yeah, but not about the social projects. But to be frank, 5 minutes is not enough for me to speak about this Sberbank. It's the bank with a 176-year history, with a great historical and great, achievements. But there are 300,000 people who are working and believing that this bank could be and will be transferred to a big IT company with its own ecosystem. And there are 4 main pillars which we are thinking about. And one of the pillars is social responsible project, social responsibility. So how Sberbank and how our team see it. So there are a lot of projects which we do. We invest to green energy. We invest in social responsible project we have our own big charity funds, Sberbank together. But at the same time, bank is developing new accelerator and new startups. And recently, in 2018, the winner of the internal accelerator was a project we name it Pay Zakat. This is the platform which are working based on artificial intelligence. It's artificial chatbot which helps you to direct your sadaqah, to calculate your zakat, and to direct your zakat payments to different markets, to different segments. But the most important thing is a feedback. So it's fully transparent, and it works on a special machine learning platform which allow you to see how each your cent, each your money create a new goodness in this world. So you see fund, you see the project, and you see your cash flow. You see how your charity is going. But the most important thing is the feedback. You see how your money creates something new. In that case, now Pay Zakat is presented on our booth. So after the panel session, you can come, you can see this nice video and speak with our CEO. He is also in this panel session. His name is Elnur. Elnur is here. If you have any questions, so please come up. And again, if you have any interesting ideas, if you have any interesting projects, please let us know. We are here, and I would like to wish you good working day, and I'm here just for this. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernhard. And as I understand, we have a booth up here with more information about Pay Zakat. Ladies and gentlemen, just to mention that the session will be broadcasted on Channel 5. So for those of you who would like to use your headphones, that's what we're on. So with that, I'd like to introduce our very exciting panelists. On my left, Adnan Adoui from Morocco. He's part of the social entrepreneurship ecosystem. Actually, I would say a pioneer in the region. Very happy and glad to have you here. Catherine Budd with Now Money, and very excited to see a social impact fintech project that addressing a local challenge in a very exciting way. We have Glenn Men with Nesta. Glenn, you just judged a very exciting creative economy project, and really keen to hear about Nesta's role and views on social impact entrepreneurship. And last but not the least, Yusuf Cares, who's Vice President of Expo Live, Expo 2020, and there's a lot that the Expo initiative is addressing from a social entrepreneurship. So please welcome all of them. So if I can just have each one of you quickly give your first top-level insights, but in fact, before that, I apologize. I wanted to set the stage for our audience here in terms of what do we mean by social entrepreneurship. And there are certainly varying degrees of definitions, but for the purposes of our discussion, both with the audience as well as our group, you see a definition up there, which essentially says social entrepreneurship that addresses social challenges relevant to Islamic economy sectors, because we're here at an Islamic economy conference, so we want to relate it to that. And we leverage Schwab Foundation, which is a social entrepreneurship global platform's definition of social entrepreneurship, which is social enterprise models that combine business practices and principles with the passion and compassion required to create a fair and just world. While Schwab uses non-for-profit as well as for-profit and hybrid business models in its definition, for the purposes of our conversation, we will be focusing on for-profit social enterprises. Okay? So that's just to set the stage. The second thing I'd like to do, if I can move the slides forward, I don't think I have a clicker, is, oh, okay. So when we talk about Islamic economy, since the launch of the Islamic Economy Initiative by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed here in Dubai, we've been focused on the core sectors of Islamic economy around halal food, Islamic finance, modest fashion, travel tourism, pharmaceutical, and cosmetics. And I think for the most part, the past few years, we've been looking at it from a Muslim consumerism point of view. It's never really come up in a strong way, the way we are doing this here, the role of these sectors, halal-related sectors, to social needs, social impact. So this year's report, we presented a framework by which we look at a comprehensive way for these sectors to address SDGs as a good model of the needs to serve. And if you grab the report, the details are in there, and I won't go into it, but I just wanted to mention that around 12 SDGs were identified, each for halal product categories, the Islamic finance as well as lifestyle sector. So that's sort of a general context. Now, one of the things, so 8 SDGs for halal products, 11 for Islamic finance, and 7 for halal lifestyle, which includes, by the way, travel sector, modest fashion, and the media recreation categories. One of the things to put in front of all of us is that around these sectors, there are SDGs or social needs that are actually quite pronounced in the Islamic product communities, globally as well as within the Muslim majority world. So for example, let's just take a few of these statistics. Obesity. About 48% people are more obese in the Muslim majority countries than the global average. Youth unemployment, 77% higher than the global average. Affordable housing, from a financing and availability point of view, about 23% higher than the global average. Infant mortality, which is, if we look at deaths per 1,000 live births, out of 1,000 while the world average is 29, and OIC is fortunate in terms of being around the same range, but compared to Europe, you look at some of the OIC countries like Pakistan or Nigeria, it's 61 or 64 per 1,000. Tobacco use, So again, I want to sort of remind our audience who are in the halal food space or Islamic finance space, so forth, where's the conversation of tobacco when you look at, compared to the world average of 20, a lot of the Islamic countries like Indonesia, Lebanon, you have the percentage of users at 39% or 34 and so forth. Financial inclusion from Islamic finance point of view, and this was one of the most startling numbers for us, is compared to the global average of 68% of adults having a financial account, including mobile, as per UN data. In OIC, it was only 50, and in some countries like Pakistan, Niger, Azerbaijan, around 20 or so percent. Food wastage, this is an embarrassing statistic, but in terms of the largest food wasters per person per year, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, US, UAE. So you can see a lot of the Muslim majority countries are, we are one of the ones that need to really address this challenge. So with that context to my panelists, I will come. Right. So what I'll leave with this slide, which is on the right-hand side today, my fellow panelists, is the entrepreneurship that's happening in the Islamic economy space today, which is, you have halal food tech, you have modest fashion startups, etc. So you would have seen them around this conference. Is there a gap to what the social entrepreneur or entrepreneurship in the Islamic economy is addressing today versus these other wider challenges of social needs? Adnan, I'll start with you and then we can go around.
So thank you for the invitation. I'll start with an exercise. If you have more than 5 dirhams, stand up. If you have more than 5 dirhams, Emirati dirhams, you can stand up. I'm sure you do have more than 5 dirhams. Okay? So basically, everybody is standing up. We have more than 1 billion people in the world. So second question, if you have a problem that affects another person rather than you, keep standing up. So that's basically it. You can go back to your feet. So basically, the issue that we're talking about, so this is something that a lot of people understand, but actually not comprehend in the way that it seems. Earlier we were talking about the whole idea of lifestyles. The lifestyles that a lot of people are having, a lot of us are having, are more into consume. Consume more, do more, travel more, and have more. The issue is that when you have more, the other side of the room have less. And this creates the global inequality. You have the global economic index and also you have the global equality index. And this is not something that only happens in certain types of countries. This is something that is across the board. Inequality is rising. And I was in a conference recently when somebody was saying there is no point of being first in a sinking world. The whole idea of climate change is not something that is just coming in the future. It's something that we eat it every day. Now we eat plastic in fish, in milk, in salt. So these are issues that affect every single one of us. And one way I'd like to introduce, and we talk about social entrepreneurship or social innovation, is how we can change the way we view things. And not only from a lifestyle perspective, but from a problem-solving perspective. And here, problem-solving not only to make good or do good or feel good from, let's say, a consumer, but like something that actually can create some type of system that enables each one of us to become what we want and to live the way we want. And here, most countries, and there's no surprise, and Nesta, I say you can give us more data, the countries that are investing the more in social entrepreneurship are not the poorest ones. The advanced countries, if we can say advanced, whether the Scandinavians or whatever countries, this is where you see the wide range of innovations that are for the common good. And I'll close up with this, is that it's not something it's not a charity-based. If we want to tie it up to an Islamic context, it's not just about, there are some poor people there, I just need to give something. Social entrepreneurship is basically creating sustainable solutions with the system. So it's not just about, something needs to be fixed and I'm just going to do this and go and fix it. Unless it creates sustainable income, unless it creates something that actually does redistribution of wealth, we're not going to go elsewhere. And somebody was saying, but every business creates jobs. So then every business creates impact. That's true. But we can then talk about how does this business create wealth in this whole ecosystem. How is it redistributed through all the barriers? If it's not just and equal, it's not going to create something that we can all be living there together.
Great, and I'm going to come back to you about your point about, isn't just job creation social entrepreneurship, and I'm sure many in the audience would have similar views. Catherine, if you can introduce your project, your venture, and then your thought about, what we started talking about around the gaps.
Sure. So I'm Catherine Budd. I'm the co-founder of Now Money. We're a mobile banking solution predominantly for underserved segments of the Gulf, which is people on a lower income who don't meet the requirements at traditional banks to open an account. I'd say, just thinking about this issue of social impact, and particularly with regards to the Islamic economy, I think both those categories, so both social impact ventures and Islamic ventures, are often considered to be incredibly niche by people who are investors, and that's certainly where there tends to be a gap for people who start a business in these arenas, because investors tend to see them as something that's only of interest either to Muslims or to people who want to give to charity. Now, there's no point thinking about something that is as niche when they represent 25% of the global population. You would never develop a product for children or for the elderly and have investors say that's niche. A product for children is niche. Now, we've got 25% of the global economy representing this. So that's the first point. It isn't niche to begin with. The second is you can develop a product which does fit the Islamic model. Yielders would be a great example. It's a UK crowdfunding platform which is Sharia compliant. They don't advertise the fact that they're Sharia compliant because 70% of the people who use it are not actually Muslims. So they've developed a Sharia compliant product that is widely used by the mass market. So just because something starts in that arena doesn't mean it hasn't got the capacity to go big. If you think about Facebook, that started by people who just started it for people in universities. That was a tiny percentage of the population, but now everybody uses it. If you started a wrinkle cream that was halal and women found it was amazing, do you not think that every woman on the planet would start using it? All these products, just because they start in Sharia or they start in social impact, doesn't mean they haven't got potential to scale in a massive, massive way. And I think they are hugely overlooked by investors. And one of the reasons that you're starting to see countries like Scandinavia put together these funds for investing in those areas is they've spotted that this is a massive untapped opportunity. And those companies that have started in either Sharia or social impact or a combination of both are actually exploding across the mainstream.
Great. Well, I'm fascinated by the fact that you, with your venture, are addressing a need that's very local, it's very pronounced. I think a lot of us see it, but are not taking any action, and it's exciting, and we'll come back to that. So, Glenn, if you can introduce your venture, or Nesta, because I know you do a lot. You actually do social venture building and innovation around it. Your thoughts around its relation to Islamic economy.
Yeah, so for my sins, I used to run an accelerator program for tech for good companies, and that's how I ended up at Nesta. Nesta was one of our investors. So we are an innovation foundation. We have an endowment that we spend, and we work with partners to support innovation for the public benefit in 5 areas: in health, education, the creative economy and the arts, government innovation, and innovation policy. And I think, I can't speak for Nesta, but from my perspective, I think that the potential of social innovators is to tell us what these numbers mean. So it's very, very important that we measure what the natal birth rate is in Nigeria, or that we look at what financial inclusion metrics are. But we have spent as a world, we spent the last 50 years lifting quite a lot of people out of poverty. But at the moment, the answer to we have 80% unbanked people in a given country is let's give them a bank account. What social innovators can do is turn that around and say, what kind of bank account do they need? What's really relevant? I think Now is hopefully is one of them. You should maybe open one of those. And the flip side, and potentially more relevant is not more relevant, but differently relevant is thinking about. So if we're looking at natal birth rate, if you're a parent, you don't care if the natal birth rate in your country is 60 or 4.5. What you care about is if your child dies. And so social innovators can help to take some of these last people that live in very, very complex needs and start to break that up into new areas and give us as a species, as a community, as a country, insights on how we can address the very drastic problems that that the bottom kind of 10% or 8% of us have.
Great. If I can move to Yusuf, we're all very excited to see the upcoming Expo 2020. Can you tell us, introduce the program, the wider program of Expo Live, and your views about the gaps that we're discussing?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you hear? Is it good? No? Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yusuf. For those of you who are from Dubai, I hope you have heard about this World Expo that we're hosting in a couple of years from now. For those of you who are visiting, Dubai, here in the UAE, will host the next World Expo in 2020. World Expos are a mega event like the Olympics or the World Cup. But they're a little bit different. They run for 6 months, and they happen every 5 years. A city hosts them, and it's like the Olympics, but instead of countries sending athletes, they send their innovators. Mm-hmm. They send their food. They send their artists. They send the best of what they have, so that they can portray themselves to the world in a manner that they want. So we're going to be hosting it in 2020, and we're very proud of that. And again, within this aspect of the expo, which relates to innovation, our leadership here in Dubai made a promise that our expo would be the most inclusive expo, even also when it comes to innovation. Expos are famous for people showcasing, new innovations. For example, the X-ray was unveiled at an expo. The telephone was unveiled as an expo. But these were unveiled by particular people who had come from traditional places and had the market and the access to showcase at the expo. And that's where our expo is going to be different, through the program called Expo Live, which I am honored to be and blessed to be responsible for. We are a $100 million fund that looks for people like Catherine, who are making a change in the world, and we provide them with a fund to say, you're the kind of program that the world needs to know about. You're the kind of innovation that's going to change the future. I love what you do, as you can see.
Not paying for that.
Exactly. It's free promo right there. But it's Catherine plus 70 more from 42 different countries that we have found so far, and provided a grant of up to $100,000 to make sure that they get to achieve what they want to achieve. We're still looking. We're running our 4th round right now. And the whole point is to say that innovation can come from anywhere. The world, the future really does belong to those who are, brave and committed and passionate about what they do. And that's kind of what we're doing today, looking for innovators, particularly and with a very strong emphasis on social innovators. Right? With all the respect, we don't necessarily think that if you have a startup that has the next tastiest burger in town, that's not the kind of stuff we're looking for. We're kind of looking for the stuff that really does solve the problems that were identified here today. That these are innovations that matter, and that we identify social innovators and social entrepreneurship by basically looking at the why. It matters to us significantly why you started that business. More even to what the technology does. Yes. I care a lot about the why, and also to whom. In fact, our entire application process, not entirely, that's unfair to say, but the questions that we ask are pretty much what problem you're trying to solve, and why do you care so much about this? Who is this going to be benefit, and why should they care about what you're doing? Based on that, you can get a chance of winning $100,000 from the expo.
Great.
I can go off on that.
This is obviously for many of those in our audience who are entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs. This is a very important program to know about. And I know, Adnan, you mentioned this Expo Life program. While you run your own incubator programs, there was a winner also from Morocco.
No, a friend from Bahrain actually won.
From Bahrain won, but it's one of the
please
only
spread
such
the word in Morocco. We're looking big time in Morocco.
It's in process.
Yeah.
So I think, Yusuf, when's the deadline for this next round?
December 2nd.
December 2nd. So there's still time for people to submit to this grant program, and having 70 winners so far,
Yep.
it's a great track record already. Okay, given the short time, I actually want to open it up right away to the audience. And first of all, I'd like to ask how many of you are and consider yourself an entrepreneur? Right? Okay. You know, one of the definitions that Schwab Foundation had, one of the criteria of entrepreneurship, they said what characterizes entrepreneurship, among other things, is passion. You know, usually entrepreneurs are passionate about something. And, you know, I imagine all of us who are entrepreneurs, you've raised your hands, you're passionate about something that got you to want to endeavor in this not very easy path. So, obviously, the question, ladies and gentlemen, here is the passions that we pursue. What, you know, does it align with social needs? Should it align with social needs, right? So I'll open it up to the audience because one of the things we're looking to address is a gap we see around this. So if there are any questions, and please direct it to any of the panelists, please state your name and who you'd like to ask your question for. Yes, sister, there.
Hi, my name's Syra. I actually come from a corporate social responsibility background. One of the things I notice when I work on projects is how big, huge companies find social entrepreneurs a threat because you guys are talking to a socially conscious society and you're coming up with great ideas that will actually help society. So one of the things I actually work on are the SDGs and promoting them. How do you feel big, massive corporations can help social entrepreneurs and sort of present themselves as not being a threat? And that's for all of you.
I've had the chance to work with many corporates like Unilever and other companies. And so we have two types of approaches. Either thinking with them on, let's say, a sustainable sourcing. Like instead of thinking of entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs as a threat, but kind of a part of the value chain. Because sometimes they don't kind of reach the last mile. Sometimes they don't kind of reach the different types of audiences. So using social entrepreneurs by enabling them and putting resources. In here, a call to action to all the corporates in the rooms, because very, very few corporates, instead of the big ones, invest in social entrepreneurship. And because I run an organization that supports social entrepreneurs across North Africa. And I find it 100 times easier to speak to a Dutch or British or a US or whatever foundation or company that there is a need for social entrepreneurs and they easily put the resources than to a foundation from the region or a corporate from the region. So that's one approach. Second approach is a lot of companies now. I was last week at an event where companies used to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars just to have their staff be exposed to social entrepreneurs so that they get inspired. And this is, somebody was mentioning entrepreneurship or life-changing experiences, because most staff in companies feel bored. And they need to do some type of outgoing activities. You can call it pro bono consulting and so on. So these two aspects are the general trends, and some companies now start to invest, like kind of be the seed investor or the angel investor in an economy where people don't spend money into startups.
Okay, we'll take.
Can I say just one thing?
Sure.
You know, so I can see I can hear myself.
Can you guys hear Yusuf?
No.
Can you bring closer? Just move it a little bit closer. Yeah.
Is okay?
That's good.
If I can just add one thing about what corporates should not do. Don't hire the entrepreneur. We've seen a lot, particularly in less developed countries in Asia or in Africa, where corporates find this great startup. And they're like, oh, this is amazing. This guy, the great. And they go and they hire the guy. I was like, don't hire the guy. Empower him. Let him go. Give him wings. But don't say, this is a great asset, man. This guy is fantastic. Let's just bring him up and let him run marketing. You know? So, sorry, I just wanted to add that because I did experience a lot. And it was a bit
that's a great
It's the
great
wrong
point.
way for corporates to interact.
I might just add two ticks
Sure.
as well, if that's all right. You're getting a lot of answers. If you're in the corporate, look for people who are aligned with your interests. So Unilever famously, they look for and support social entrepreneurs that are using fast-moving consumer goods because they understand what that is. Nationwide work with Nationwide's a big banking society in the UK. So they wanted to work on our inclusive economy partnership. So they worked with that because they understand that their customers want better jobs, better mental health at work, and better access to savings. So it's looking for aligned things.
Great. Just one small thing to add to it as well. So I would also say that there are some great companies who are ready to work with social entrepreneurs, and that's great. If there isn't anybody in your particular industry, but you do need to work with somebody from there, like confront them with that threat. So say, like, is there a reason that you feel, as a big company, threatened by two people or one person working on our own? Because I can guarantee that we're not really a threat. So what is it that they feel threatened by? Is it that you're going to come in and take all their revenue? Well, then it's probably better that you're in a partnership straight away and they can take you with them for the ride in future. So I'd just try and work out what that thing is that they are feeling threatened by, because 9 times out of 10 it's something you could probably resolve very quickly.
All right, I'll take a couple more questions, and we'll actually just take the questions and then get the answers together. So one back there. Any other? None here.
Salam, I'm Zena from Finocracy. My question is in terms of the awareness gap about incubators in general and opportunities for social entrepreneurs. One of the advantages, am I audible?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
One of the advantages of social entrepreneurship is that it doesn't require a lot of skill for somebody to be an entrepreneur in terms of educational literacy. So let's assume that there is a remote part in the Himalayas, for example, where there is a social entrepreneur who has no idea about an incubator happening in the UAE, for instance. Instead of expecting him or her to be aware of an incubator, what effort can the organizers or the ecosystem take to actually reach out to that entrepreneur, help him and support him?
Okay, well, let's just take the other question, and then I think we'll probably have to wrap up. Adnan? Can we get a mic here really quick?
Assalamu alaikum.
So,
my question is for Catherine, for Money Now. Like, you're helping people open accounts who have very little to save. But I think the same people will have the requirement for microcredits in terms of emergency needs. These are the people who will require a loan, which no institution would honor. So do you have any program to address that as well? Because tying up with corporates in the region could help companies who have blue-collar workers. They need money now and then. So is there any program that helps them?
Yeah, why don't we start with that, and then anyone else can answer the other question.
Sure. So great question. Thanks very much. And you're right, it is absolutely a need for our market. We found that one of the things that they tend to have as a frustration is it might not be a really big loan that they even need, or even something to cover a huge bill. It might be that they just get a speeding fine and they've already sent the rest of their money home that month, so they just need a little bit to help tide them over. So there's quite a big demand for short-term frequent lending. So we know that demand is there for us, and I think probably any other fintech in this region. The major challenge is not knowing what the demand is or even building the technology. It's getting through the regulation and getting the right approvals to actually put that in place. One of the things that I think make that conversation especially relevant to a Sharia conversation, which is obviously the one that we're having today, is that is again a product that I think is actually easier to understand than mainstream lending. Once you get your head around how Sharia lending actually works, it tends to be perceived as a much fairer way of actually borrowing money than mainstream lending. And I think that's another massive opportunity that we've got that can become a mainstream product. But for us, in terms of getting it into the market, it's just getting through the regulatory side.
Okay. And anyone else want to respond to the lady's question about Glenn?
Yeah. So I think I've got a couple of thoughts. So one, I talk to a lot of people about going on accelerators and incubators. And the one hand is I tell people that it in a way it's like going to university. That I've known some people who have, say, got into Oxford or Cambridge, but then they've gone off and they've gone to Edinburgh or they've gone to Manchester because they're going to get what they need out of that university. And so I think it's very easy to say, oh, you should go on the Unilever accelerator, but if you're not doing a fast-moving consumer good, then it's not helpful. And so I think the useful thing is to think about what incubators can offer you. So there's the money, there's the skills, there's the kind of reputation, there's the networks that comes along with those things. So what is it that you as an entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur are going to get out of that? The skills, I will argue, the skills by and large are the same. That you know, there's a finite level of kind of social entrepreneurship skills, which is about understanding your market and building a business plan and building a business model and all of that. So the skills part is really easy, and actually, if you're the person at the back in the rural village in Nepal, you can probably get that stuff online. So then, what is coming to the UAE to go on an incubator? How is that going to be helpful for you when you're back in Nepal? Which it might be and it might not be.
I can add to that. So I run an organization that supports young people from age 14 to 25 to launch projects. So I think there's two things. One thing is people, when they talk about social entrepreneurs, they talk about the startups. If we don't have the ecosystem players in the organizations, in the incubators, there won't be any viable startups. So my call to action first to anyone in the room, wherever you're based, the first thing that you can do is go support your local ecosystem players. Because if they're not there, if they're not strong, startups that would come out of these programs wouldn't be strong. That's the first one. Second one, for the entrepreneurs themselves. I definitely agree with Glenn that there's no basic, I would say, curriculum or skill. But the difference that social entrepreneurs have is that they have to understand completely the social problem they are part of. Because if they don't understand it, they cannot create any solution. And if they don't design something that will actually solve the problem in a systematic way, it can work. So you have different types of programs and that exist where people can apply and go and receive some type of mentorship or some type of feedback. But on-the-ground support is what makes things. Mentorship, support, angel investment, and again, another call for people here. If you can invest in a startup, no amount is small. Because in many countries, $50 is a lot of money. It can help people to do prototype. Because if you make a prototype, you can create traction. And if you can create traction, you can call for larger amounts of money. So this is something that anybody can do. Right. But if we don't make it happen, it's not going to happen.
And I think the challenge that you posed with a potential entrepreneur out in the Himalayas, I think itself is a startup opportunity, wouldn't you say, from a social impact point of view. All right, so with that, I will end, but I'll end with a question. As with any entrepreneurs, we all love role models. So for a lot of the entrepreneurs, role models, successful, the Googles of the world and so forth are the inspiration. Who, and I won't ask each one of you, but who from a social entrepreneurship point of view you think worldwide would be role model brands or startups or entrepreneurship? Because honestly, I think we also have a dearth of role models in this space, certainly in the region and the Islamic economy space, but worldwide. So who would you think? And with that, we'll conclude. But any that come to mind? I know I've thrown you guys on the spot here. We didn't discuss this, but Adnan?
Yeah, so I'm, if you know an organization called Ashoka, so I'm an Ashoka Fellow. Ashoka is the leading organization that supports social entrepreneurs. You can go online, ashoka.org, and choose any country, and you would find amazing people that can be the role models. But for me personally, my role models are the entrepreneurs I work with every day. Because they are people who had choices, and they made these choices so that they can create some things. Of course, you have the big names like the Muhammad Yunus and the Braggs and so on. And they're all thought leaders in the field. So make your own role models and inspire others to become ones too.
Great. Any other takers? Or
for me, my belief is that if you really are genuinely going to create change on a big scale, you've got to make or produce something that people would buy, whether it was for good or not. Because they like it, they buy into the product, and the fact that it does good is yet another reason to buy it. And I'm going to steal something that we talked about earlier, I'm afraid, Yusuf, which is the example of Tom's shoes. Yeah. So Tom's shoes make really cool shoes that people would probably buy anyway if they went into a store. But their entire philosophy since they started the brand was buy one, give one. So every time people buy those shoes, which are nice shoes than they would have bought anyway, they just get a little feel-good moment because they know a kid in Africa or somewhere is going to be given a pair of shoes instead of running around barefoot. So I think if you can create that kind of model, which it just sells itself, so much the better.
Great. Okay.
I'll pick. I'm going to slightly cheat. My when I did my master's, there was a guy called Dhruv Lakra who, when you're doing a course or something, you look around and you're like, that guy, I just know that guy's going to be really successful. So Dhruv, we were like, I know Dhruv's going to be really successful. And we finished up and like, Dhruv, what are you going to do? And he's like, I don't know, I'm going to go home and figure it out. And so he went back home to India, he got on buses and he went around and he just talked to people. And he was sitting on a bus talking to someone who said, who basically told him the story about his sister who almost never left the house because she was deaf. And so apparently in India, I don't know, I could be saying something wrong, but apparently in India, this is a type of disability that's kind of invisible, but it's not very well treated. So what Dhruv has done is he started a courier company, and this was like 8 years ago. It's called Miracle Couriers, Miracle with a K. He started Miracle Couriers, and they started moving packages around. And he's the only hearing person. They're employing, I don't know, 75 or 100 people. It's a thing that people paid for and was needed. They're now doing the last mile Amazon and same day Amazon deliveries in Mumbai. They're really, really good. He's an Echoing Green Fellow, not a Ashoka Fellow, unfortunately. But he's a really great guy. You just talk to him and he just puts the work that he's doing ahead of kind of everyone, but he's always doing a bit better.
Okay, great. Yusuf, if you can just say it in one word, a name, or else we can...
Unfair, because I was saying Muhammad Yunus, and then she took Tom Shoe. Those are the only two I know.
Well, with that,
they're famous.
I think that leaves us with the opportunity to create more brands and role models, because I think a lot of us probably drew a blank coming up with recognized brands. And Tom Shoes and these, I would say honestly, they've been there for a while. Yeah. We should have like major brands coming up and recognized brands around social impact space. With that, thank you everyone. I'd like to thank the panel and hope this was beneficial to all.